Welcome back to TMI with Terrell and Martha. We took a little bit of a holiday break.
Yes, we did. Well needed, though.
We're back together, though, which is great.
We didn't break up.
No, we didn't break up. Not this time.
No.
But we want you to like and subscribe on YouTube because you can follow us audio or video, and we love that. We want you to interact with us, so like and subscribe. This week, we're going to talk about RFK. We do an update every so often related to health and human services. And the big news was related to the food pyramid. And it's so interesting to me because if people would normally be for it, they're against it, people against it, for it. We're going to talk about what it really is.
I think that's great because my background is a lot in nutrition. Going through an exercise science program, nutrition is very heavy in that. If you're going to try to help people change their lives, change their bodies, you've got to be able to teach them how to eat. So I would teach groups of people that would come pay me to talk to them about how to make the best diet to get the body that you're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. Just be the healthiest you want to be. So personally, when I saw the change, I was thrilled because I was never that excited about the food pyramid as it was. There was a lot of grains. It was very heavy grains, heavy processed foods in that particular. Not that it said processed foods really, but
so many carbs,
a lot of carbs. And I, as a personal trainer, I do have some things to discuss regarding this one. But am I thrilled we have a new one? Yes. I mean, so much time has gone by. We needed to do something different, don't you think?
Well, there were two things that I think happened back when the last food pyramid came along. I don't think it was a bad idea to have 5 servings of fruits, 5 servings of vegetables. Those kinds of things I don't think were a bad thing. And a lot of that's still there, okay? Mm-hmm. But what was interesting, there were these two things that happened back 40 or 50 years ago when this was going on, where they did this situation where they had went to the BMI stuff. Right. So automatically, and that's separate from the food, but automatically people went from being normal size to being fat like overnight.
Well, and BMI does have its problems.
It does. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, people with muscle or bigger builds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was this kind of weird chart that didn't make any sense and didn't take into consideration individual things.
Right.
And then we had the new food pyramid, and we're talking about the last one, the one we came away from, where it had all these carbs and all these other things.
Very heavy.
Kind of talked bad about fats and things like that, which again...
Low fat, low cholesterol.
In my whole food journey, I've just gone, the Yellow Brick Road, the Magical Mystery Tour, whatever you want to call it. And now I'm just back to, whether you call it a pyramid or whatever you call it, eating as close to what is fresh as possible. That's what I want to do. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that that's the good part about the food pyramid. I mean, there are people that don't eat meat. There are people out there that don't eat, maybe they're pescatarian. Maybe they just eat fish. Maybe you just eat chicken. There's a lot of differences in diet, right? My thing is that if we could get people, at least if they're going to look at the food pyramid and make their personal choices off the food pyramid, which I honestly think would be crazy to do anyway, because every human body is different. But I think that if they're going to do that, they need to look at how they can incorporate it, but within the range of their own food preferences, within their lives. I felt personally that having the protein intake is good. If anybody that wears a glucose monitor for any period of time, they will learn quickly that protein is essential in keeping your blood glucose levels in a very stable place.
Well, and one of the biggest problems as we get older is our albumin levels get low, and that means you're not getting enough protein in your diet.
Yeah.
And I can remember I had this kind of Earth Shoes doctor when I was growing up. You remember Earth Shoes, guys? They were those ones that were supposed to teach you how to walk better. But he said, the egg has been maligned. This was 30, 40 years ago. The egg is this great source of protein.
Yeah.
It's inexpensive,
right? And
you can make it a million different ways.
Right.
So that especially for older people that are having a harder time getting protein in their diet
too, it's good for your gut. It's easier on your gut.
So it's better. So let's look at these kind of categories. You mentioned protein already, and one of the guidelines are prioritizing protein at every meal.
Okay. I think that's perfect. You could use it, do chicken. You can do beef. You could do fish. The people that don't eat, people that are vegan or vegetarian, they're going to just have to find another source of protein, which there's plenty out there. There's lots of studies that show people can survive just fine. But if they're not eating meats, that's just the main source of protein.
And for me, protein keeps me full longer. So if I have protein as the kind of cornerstone of the meal I'm making, I'm not going to get as hungry and I'm going to feel more satisfied. The second part is consuming, this one had a lot of controversy, consuming full-fat dairy with no added sugars. And I got there on my own several years ago, where I realized there was all kinds of stuff added to milk. And you had, a million different kinds of milk that you had out there. And milk was getting a bad name. And granted, there are people that have lactose intolerance and things like that.
Yes.
But in general, if you're going to have milk, have full-fat milk. Don't add anything to it.
Right.
Learn to eat with less sugar.
I'll tell you another adventure I've been on where I've learned with the food is that glucose monitor I was wearing.
Yes.
Right. So one of the things I recognize, how doctors tell you before you go get any kind of labs and you're going to fast, you can have black coffee or water. That's it. Well, I discovered for me, and what happens to me or what happens to Martha or, the preferences we're talking about, again, everybody's a different individual. But for me, black coffee jacked my fasting insulin, my fasting glucose up really, really high, which would then cause an insulin spike. So I go in to get a fasting glucose,
blood work
done, and I'm going to have really high levels. And that explained a few tests to me because I realized that my cortisol system react to the coffee without any fats. So that's why the bulletproof coffee became so popular, right? Is because they were taking medium chain triglycerides, MCT oil, and putting it in the coffee and then putting in whatever else that we're going to put in there. Cinnamon too is very good for glucose stabilization. But the bulletproof coffee is adding the fats, and that's where full fat milk comes in. As long as they say to keep your fat we'll get to the fat part. But,
right.
I do kind of have some concerns about some of the specifics that they create around some of these areas because there's intermittent fasting. There's different things that people do that work great for their bodies that wouldn't really do well with some of the percentages. Right.
Well, the next thing is eating vegetables and fruits throughout the day, focusing on whole forms. I mean, I think, Annie, that's just logical. Okay,
and
that's
just
logical.
Throughout the day mean? Are we going to be grazing like a cow out in the field?
I think it means that instead of having a donut as a snack, you might have a piece of fruit.
Okay.
I think that's what that means.
I was kind of thinking, we're not going to go
grazing all day long.
Yeah. But, because that is kind of counterintuitive for really anybody that's doing the intermittent fasting.
Tim Russer, God rest his soul, he died of a heart attack a number of years ago. But prior to that, he had famously been up and down with his weight.
Right.
And when he was telling one of his stories, he said, I just, instead of having a donut in mid-morning, I had an orange or an apple.
Yeah.
And he lost like 25 pounds without even really trying.
And he ate the orange.
Yes.
The fiber, everything.
Yes.
The skin, the skin, the fiber. I think that is a good thing. Juices, on the other hand, I'm not a fan.
No.
Because I think the juice really does wreak havoc on our bodies. And they are starting to see how glucose and insulin affects the lining of the arterial wall, which then also affects heart disease, right? So it's all tied together. Way more than cholesterol. Cholesterol was made the enemy. And now they're starting...
Which made the egg the enemy.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So they dropped the cholesterol intake. People and then started, and then they erased the cholesterol level from 300, took it down to 200, so more people would have to get the statins. And then, wow, would you not know that all of a sudden you see a rise in Alzheimer's? You see a rise in all these brain-related cognitive function disorders because the brain's number one fuel is cholesterol. It needs the cholesterol to thrive. And
Well, and
so,
I think in a lot of areas, it's a good theory that if you lower the number, then you catch people earlier with
Yeah.
the problem. That's a
Yeah.
good theory, but it doesn't always
not
work.
too
And you
low.
can't just be married. Well, and you just can't be married to
Yep.
the numbers, to your point. Okay. So
Yes.
my brother had an aorta dissection. And so as a result of that, every 2 years, I get a CTA, what's called a CTA
I'm so glad you
of
did
my
that.
chest and abdomen
Mhm.
to measure my aorta, to be
Good.
sure everything's good. Well, the first time I got it, my aortic root was a little bit enlarged. Okay. And so, of course, having just been through that,
Right.
I was concerned. But the doctor said, don't worry. It was just a little bit. And then over the years of doing it, we didn't know that's just the normal rate for me. That's
Right.
normal for
Your
me.
body does
My body's a
great
little
with
different.
right.
Yeah.
And that's where the doctors started seeing with over the last year or more with my health. Even one of my great friends who's a endocrinologist, she's like, you do well. You have genetically high cholesterol, but you have zero calcium screening. And to be honest, you've been doing great. Like,
Yeah.
but I have lowered mine, but it's like 247. It's not under 200.
Yeah, but it's so crazy because
But-
I run with the same problem, and thankfully I got a primary care doctor that lives in my home. He's my husband, and he'll look at the numbers
That's really-
because the doctor
you're
will
cheating.
say,
No.
the doctor will say, oh, this is a little high. You need to be careful about this, and he'll look at it and goes, that
You're
is
fine.
nothing. You're fine. You're fine.
You're fine.
So the next category was incorporating healthy fats from whole foods such as meats, seafood, eggs, nuts, seeds, olives, and avocados.
Right.
I think that's just natural. Meat cooks better when it's got a little marbling in
Yep.
it. If it's too lean, I mean, I love a piece of lean meat too, but if it's too lean, it's going to be tough.
Right.
And so it's just common sense. If you have a little bit of fat, I mean, I love to use venison for stews and things like that, but I have to add a little
It's
fat to
lean.
that.
It's very
lean. I have to add a little fat. I'll either mix it with a little hamburger meat or use another kind of fat, either
to
blend it up and make it a
plus,
little
we
bit
all
easier to
know
eat.
Fat tastes really good.
It does. It does. It does. It does. Then focusing on whole grains while sharply reducing refined carbohydrates.
Yeah, there you
processed
go. That's the
foods.
key.
Yeah.
So the processed foods, I think if one of the things that I told my girls, I have 3 daughters, and one of the things that I've always tried to tell them is at least if you can eat most of your foods and they're not coming from a box, right? If you can eat a larger 80%, remember we've talked 80-20,
80-20, yeah.
80-20, but it's the same kind of thing, right? You're gonna not be on the mark all the time, but if 80% of your intake is whole food, right? From the animal, from the plant, it's not coming from a box, then you're likely to see some really good numbers headed your way, right? If you can keep that. If you want to go out and have cheesecake on occasion, or, I've got a birthday coming up, so do I want to celebrate that and have some dessert? Yes. But do I stay away from sugar for the most part? Yes. But yeah.
And the next category is limit highly processed foods, added sugars, and artificial additives. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. You just don't overprocess. Don't use too much sugar. I just really reduce the amount of sugar I put in anything. I make tea for my husband. My mother-in-law taught me how to make it. But I have cut the sugar to a quarter of what I used to use.
No, I bet.
I mean, I used to put,
in the South was like,
yes.
It was sugar with a little bit of tea.
That's right. So instead of a cup of sugar in a gallon, I use a quarter cup of sugar in a gallon. It's still sweet enough to take the edge off. I prefer mine unsweetened, but my husband likes a sweet tea. So we got it down to a quarter of what it is, and it's healthier, and he's able to drink
as long as he's not drinking it all day long. That's, it's easy. And that's the unfortunate part in our country for sure. More than anything, I can't tell you how many young people I see, my daughter, Savannah, I'm talking to you, but walking around with these big venti lattes from either Dunkin' or Starbucks, and it's the one with the vanilla and the da-da-da-da, and it's got tons of sugar in it. And that is a huge hit to the human body. But it's easy to drink your sugar and not remember to count it. You don't think of it as food because you're drinking it. So it gets kind of lost in the mix. The same with alcohol. A lot of people like really sweet, juicy cocktails, right? Or even some wines have a lot of sugar in them. So you really don't think at the end of the day when you're having a drink, it doesn't necessarily get added to your sugar intake, which it should. So really the best note to self on that is drink water and, put some lemon in it. But drink water is your main source of fluid throughout the day. And then, if you want a cup of coffee, get a human-sized cup of coffee. Maybe not the venti with all the sugars and the whipped creams.
Well, and they're a lot better about having some sugar-free options with those, or they'll make them sugar-free for you. I mean, look, the most fun of going to a coffee shop like that is having 14 choices in how you put it together.
And, moderation, basically. Everything in moderation. Nothing's going to kill you. I would hope to say that, and I don't know that anymore, but I'm hoping that nothing in moderation is going to kill you. But, I also caution these sugar alternatives. Know what you're getting if you're going to have a sugar alternative, because there's a lot of studies out there on those as well, especially the aspartame and the different ones. But like there's types of sugar alternatives. Stevia is a good one that don't necessarily play with your hormones, and it doesn't necessarily jack up your insulin levels.
Well, I'm a firm believer that a lot of the issues I've had over the years has been because I always drank diet drinks.
Yes.
I mean,
those are,
and I think they made me hungrier.
Yes.
I think they made me hungrier.
It does.
Yeah.
It reset people's brain. And, there's a lot of really good studies out on that. And I dove into them because my mother loves sucralose and different, types of sweeteners. And I was like, this is...
it's that age group, though.
Yeah.
Got to stay
what do you call
thin.
it? The packet. Yeah.
So
the pink packet.
This is really important.
Don't be mad.
And this, I love they put this in there, even though it's not necessarily like a part of the pyramid. Right. Eat the right amount of food for you based on age, sex, size, and activity level.
Well, I mean, that's good advice.
It's good advice. It's like I'm 66 years old. I cannot eat as much as I did or need to eat as much as I did when I was 34 years old or 36 years old.
Your metabolism is not going to hold up the same way. And as a trainer, I've always known, and I'm having to learn to now that I'm turning 60, I've got to learn how to taper my diet, my workouts, everything, because as you get older, your body has very different needs. But I think where the food pyramid is concerned, because it is for a mass population, it isn't for you individually. It's not for Martha individually. It's not for me individually. The food pyramid is a guideline.
Yes.
Right? And it's a better guideline than we had. So we should all just come together and celebrate that we have a better guideline than we had. Is it fallible? Yes. There are some areas that are going to need to work themselves out. Food chain supplies are going to have to change. But the good news is the schools will have better foods. Prisons will have better, anything federally organized will have better food, and we will be getting,
I tell you what, though,
better food to people.
I do have fond memories from those school lunches. Okay?
Yeah, the pizza, the square pizza was my favorite. Yeah.
They had these rolls that were just like unbelievable.
Well, strawberry milk is my granddaughter's favorite.
I mean, there was this peanut butter and honey sandwich that they did.
Oh, yeah.
That was just delicious on Wonder Bread or whatever it was.
Yes,
I mean, because my mom always bought whole wheat bread. So like getting white bread at school was like a big deal. Yeah. So it's and my mom was always a fresh cooker. When I got home from school, my mom was one of the few moms on the street that worked. And so she didn't want anybody to know I was coming home to an empty house. I guess I was the original latchkey kid. And so it would be like, don't go outside to play. You can play when I get home. Yeah. And then she'd leave me the instructions on how to put the meal together, which was great.
Wow.
And so when to put it in and all that kind of stuff.
Gosh, I never thought of that.
And I know, it was great. And she loved, and this may be a bad thing now, remember those Browning bags? Now, they were plastic, but it was a great way to cook like a whole meal. You put the chicken and all the vegetables and all the stuff in there. You tie up the thing, you put it in the oven. I don't know how it didn't melt, but it was probably something we shouldn't have. But
awesome.
It cooked everything, and it was a full fresh meal that you could have when she came home.
A hamburger helper.
Yeah. I did that sometimes.
A hamburger helper. I mean,
my kids loved that.
It was inexpensive. I was working mom.
Did you read the box?
I never read the box. I never read the box. I'd get the hamburger and I'd use the hamburger helper and it was so yummy. Then I did start figuring out how to make hamburger helper without the box. But I will say I might have spent a lot of money on Kraft mac and cheese.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny because I make
yeah.
the best mac and cheese from scratch.
Ooh.
My grandkids do
Don't tell
not
me
like
that.
it.
That's my favorite thing.
My grandkids do not like it.
Really?
They like
the Kraft mac
the
and
Kraft
cheese.
mac and cheese or the Velveeta mac and cheese. So I made the Velveeta in the
yeah.
Okay, the Velveeta in the box.
Right.
I made it, and little Benji, my sweet little grandson comes up and says, "Oh, this is like the best mac and cheese I ever had." All right, so I have it around all the time. I'll admit it. So you make choices is what you do.
Yeah, and I think that if you want to have some of that good old
comfort
food,
food,
crack dip for the football games with Velveeta mac and cheese, and you got your sauce, your spicy sausage, and your Rotel. We're not saying that
you can never do that.
No,
just not every day.
No, but the food pyramid for a mass population is the chef's kiss to me. As a personal trainer, I had to help people. I helped athletes. I do feel like my personal opinion that the guideline to eat a pound to a little, 1.2 to more, 1.5 grams of protein per body weight. That is a recommendation you make to an athlete who is trying to really gain a lot of bulk and become I think a better thing. It's too much protein for a general person.
What I had a nutritionist say to me one time was that you look at your plate, and she made me use a 1970s plate,
they're like our
and that you like a third is your protein,
right,
and then 2 vegetables,
the size of your hand.
Absolutely, look at it that way.
That is, if you eat. The size of your hand is 30 grams of protein. So if you at least have 2 solid meals a day, that's 30, 60, whether it's steak, chicken, whatever, that's a guideline. So that's about 60 grams. Maybe you have a few eggs. So you're looking at about 70 grams of protein if you have some breakfast with protein. That is good. That's a good guideline. And that's what I always used with my clients. I had a lot of success as a personal trainer. I didn't go into dietetics. I wasn't a macronutritionist. I was just a common sense nutrition support.
So the last 2 things on this you've alluded to already. Choose water and unsweetened beverages to support hydration. That was the biggest change that I made in my life was reducing sugar, more water, and unsweetened drinks. Now, I learned that a little trick when you're in the radio business is that I learned
getting some tips.
Yes, I learned how I learned how to drink without sugar is that spilling things is always bad in a studio, but spilling sticky things is really bad.
Oh,
and so that's how I got out of having sugar in everything, even my coffee, because, I didn't want to make the engineer go crazy.
Yeah.
Because I talk with my hands. And I might have knocked a coffee cup over once or twice.
Yeah.
And so I learned that the hard way.
I thought about that in your studio the other day. when you brought me the coffee, I was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, we got to be careful.
I know. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the final thing, and you alluded to this also, is limit alcohol consumption for better overall health.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a huge movement I don't know if you've noticed this with your children, but in the 30-something range, there's a huge no drinking movement. Like they've just stopped drinking alcohol. And, I'm like, gosh, that's no fun. No.
And the ones right behind were the craft beer people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, I'm proud of them. I think that's great. They're probably going to live a lot longer. Maybe they'll be more healthy. Again, I feel like for me, balance is good.
Moderation, I think.
I'm not a big drinker. I never was, but I do love a good glass of red wine or a hot toddy.
Yeah.
Or a bourbon in the cold winter by the fire and sip on a good bourbon or a good scotch. But I'm not a big drinker, but it does add, if you're just looking at just calories, it adds a lot of extra calories.
It does. And I think that especially these kind of fancy drinks that people make that have a lot of sugar in them.
Drinks, juice drinks.
But one of the, I probably once a week, we go out with friends once a week. I'll have 2 drinks. That's what I do. I can't do more than 2 drinks.
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
Amen. Never again. I can't do it. My body doesn't process it
My
the way it
husband's the
used
same
to.
way.
The way it used to.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be like I could have a couple of drinks and maybe like watching a football game.
Right.
It's a 4-hour long thing. You might have a couple of drinks and one more. I can't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
Listen to your body.
Yeah.
You know,
Everybody's
all
different.
of these things are great guidelines, Terrell, but you still have to listen to your body.
Mm-hmm. And we're also different. I did have to have this conversation because my beautiful oldest daughter decided she wanted to wear a glucose monitor.
Just for fun?
Yeah. But it was a really bad idea for her. It did change her habits. So she has learned that maybe the oatmeal every morning is not the best plan for her, first thing. And she's learned that even protein oatmeal doesn't do that. It's just jacks her right up. But protein, eggs, is a solid base. If you eat your eggs in the morning, if you eat protein first, then having a source of grains, I mean, vary your diet. Have some grains, have some pastas. I'm not saying ditch the Italian world, but eat the protein first when you can, right? Because that will then help slow the absorption of the carbohydrates as they turn into the glucose in your body.
But don't you, I mean, it's going to go up and down all day anyway in normal people. Okay. The question is it going up and staying up if you're diabetic? Correct? Is that right?
Right. But you have to watch how long it takes for it to drop.
Right. Okay.
Right. And if you're doing experiments with food, there are foods that you can eat that won't take you out of your range, your healthy range. And there's foods that will, but your body is designed to do that. It's a good thing that your glucose shoots up. And what else I discovered while I was, in bed over the last week was that when you're sick, your body's T cells, your body's white blood cells, they need glucose to thrive, to fight any infection. So naturally, your body's fasting glucose levels will rise 10 to 20% when you're ill.
Well, and that's one thing I was going to ask you about, because I know that a lot of elderly people that get hospitalized or get sick or they're down for a couple of weeks, all of a sudden their doctor will say they're pre-diabetic. When really, I know it happened with my mother that she got her hip replaced, so she wasn't as mobile for a period of time, and then her sugar went up. But because she had a family history, I'm not saying the doctor did anything wrong. I think that he was trying to be abundantly cautious. But as time went on, my mom was like, I don't really think I'm diabetic. It wasn't even, because once she got back to her normal level of activity, she was fine.
Her body was acting we have a smart body. We really do. And sometimes we're almost too smart for our own good, right? With the more education we've gotten, the more biofeedback and the devices, we stop trusting the innate design of our own body, right? And so it's a wonderful thing that we can eat and the glucose shoots up. Do you want to have high glucose levels all the time? No.
Right.
But when you see your glucose is rising because you've had food, and maybe you had I might have had a half a sourdough loaf one day. Didn't mean to do that, but it was so good.
Yeah.
And funny for me, I had the glucose monitor on. I was just doing it just because I'm a scientist. I love to research. And that just knocked it. It was up to 180 or something like that. It was really high. But I put on my monitor under the nose, half a loaf of sourdough right here.
So what do you see as this is being rolled out? Because again, the big part of this, it was rolled out with RFK and Brooke Rollins, who's the ag secretary. Right. So there's a big emphasis on agriculture as well as the school lunch program, which we talked about on another program. That the weird thing about the school lunch program is it got rolled into the Department of Agriculture because there were a lot of city folks that were elected to office that wouldn't vote for farm stuff unless there was something in it for them. And so the school lunch program got rolled into the Department of Agriculture instead of the Department of Education. So this is going to impact school lunches.
Definitely.
This is going to impact guidelines in other places, hospitals and things like that.
Any public, federally owned facility will have to start working with the guidelines more specifically than we as individuals will have to worry about that. So, I think it's going to be a better change overall based on what we've had.
Right.
Right. But there are going to be issues that we're going to come across. I think that we're also going to, Dr. Berg has a great YouTube that I sent you earlier. He talks about the supply chain concerns we're going to have, because when you take a food pyramid and basically flip it upside down, which is what we've done, you got to figure out how to make that happen.
Right.
Right. And local farmers are going to be loving this, different things, but how is that going to play out? And we have to, as a population, I think we have to be patient, because it's going to take time to roll this out. But as far as getting the education out and the information out, I think it's great. And to argue over a food pyramid that you could choose to adopt into your lifestyle or not is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and I love the fact there was a lot of controversy made about the fact that RFK is, quote, not a doctor, which he is not. But he's got really great doctors heading up. Like Mama Oz, a lot of people say, oh, well, that's Dr. Oz. Well, yeah, but he was a cardiothoracic surgeon, which is like the top of the top in medical school. You've got Dr. McCary, who's over FDA, who is a very world-renowned.
They're educated.
They're very well-educated people. So what I would say is review this, get the information where you can, read as much as you can about it. Don't go out and change everything in your pantry. Just start instituting some of these ideas as you can.
Adopt it. What you don't like, throw it out. Nobody cares.
It's very common sense, though.
Yeah, and otherwise, go get yourself a arm sensor. There's fun things you can do to just get some biofeedback on your own body, because really what your body does is not going to be the same as as many people. So there is no one pyramid fits all. But I think that it's a great start. And if we could all come together and agree at least on one thing, is that there's real whole food there, and there's an emphasis on it, and we're de-emphasizing the processed foods, which I think should have come personally, this should have happened a long time ago. So
absolutely. So we're so glad you came with us today, and we talked about this. We always love your interaction, so please like and subscribe. Let us know what you think about the food pyramid. Have you tried it? Are you going to throw it out? Are you falling off of it? I don't know. But we really want you to be a part of the discussion.
Yeah, we'll try to get back to you on the comments. So comment below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcast, start up the conversation, send it to your friends and family. Talk about it, because that's how we do make change in this country, is by people having conversation that isn't necessarily aggressive and conflict based. But thank you so much for joining us. This is a passion project for both Martha and myself, because we know that your wellness deserves a little oversharing.